Welcome to the first of a series of videos showcasing the Apollo Chamber Players 20 by 2020 commissions. And I'm joined today by the four members of the Apollo Chamber Players, Matthew Dietrich, Annabelle Ramirez, Whitney Bullock, and Matthew Dudzik, and the odd person out, perhaps not a member of the Apollo Chamber Players, is composer Libby Larsen. Welcome, everybody. Matthew Dietrich, talk about this commissioning project, which 20 by 2020, which is something that really has put the Apollo Chamber Players on the musical map in many respects. Isn't that so?
Yes, thank you, St.John. In 2013, we commissioned our very first piece from Rice University faculty composer Karim Alzan, who had been a professor of mine when I was a student. And because of this commission, it was titled Fantasy on Bulgarian Rhythms. We did it so we could premiere a new piece in Carnegie Hall and during this tour, our very first major tour, and then we put it on a disc. We had such an amazing experience commissioning this new piece of music, learning it. You know, we opened up, we're like, hey, this is our baby. You know, we have ownership over this in a way. We're gonna birth it to the world. I remember that's a feeling that was very, very unique to me, and I'm sure my colleagues, and it was very special to work with the composer to bring this to life. So when we were planning our next season and the next year, we said, hey, maybe we should do some kind of big project where we can essentially put Apollo on the new music map. And so we had some ideas. I remember I first wanted to commission a new piece for every single concert that next season, which would have been like 3 or 4 or 5 commissions. And then I think it was Matt Dudzik who said, hey, what if we did 20 pieces by the end of the decade? And I remember thinking, hey, Dudzik is usually a little more the conservative voice than Apollo. And you know, I took that to heart. And I remember I was going on a run, and he had texted this, and we were all kind of exchanging some ideas. And I went on this run, and I kind of like put this all in my head over the course of the next, what would be the 6 years. And I remember I came back and I was excited, like, hey, we should do this. Let's talk about it more. So over the course of a couple of meetings, we all, had some ideas about who the first composer should be. And I think at that point, I was not that familiar with the music of Libby Larsen, I'm sad to say, but I think Whitney was. And so we Googled her. I remember Googling her and saying, well, she's a pretty notable, famous composer. How in the world can we snag her for this very first commission to launch our 20 by 2020 project?
How did you get in contact with Libby? Because it's one thing to look up a famous composer on Google, but it's another thing entirely to actually make contact with them. How did that come about? I mean, you could have sort of, I guess, cold call or cold emailed, but did you have a special way in?
We did have a special door to Libby Larsen in another great friend and colleague of ours named James Dunham, a violist at Rice University. And I don't think that he put in a good word for us, but I remember dropping his name in the email and saying, hey, Libby, we've been listening to your pieces, and James is a good friend of ours, and we want him to be part of this premiere concert too. So that was kind of a part of the proposal. But really, and Libby can explain this a little bit better, we were thinking of doing something associated with the African-American composer Henry Thacker Burleigh and his relationship to the Czech composer Anton Dvorak. So I think this was in the cold call email with Libby, if you will, the cold call email in the beginning. And why did you latch on to that idea, Libby?
Funny you should bring that up, Matt. When something's right and it's in the air, it just is right. And when you did cold call me on an email, I originally thought, no, I'm too busy. I need time to think. But you mentioned Harry Thacker Burleigh, and as I had been at the Library of Congress, actually, in a think tank, and for 5 weeks, and during that time, actually 5 months, I take it back. During that time, I had learned about Burleigh and his relationship to Dvorak, and it stuck in my mind. this was in the early 2000s, mostly because in the Western European musical culture, Burle is hardly ever mentioned in relationship to Dvorak. And Dvorak is often referred to as the first great composer to use, spirituals. We now, I think, can see in retrospect that that maybe there is a different perspective that we ought to be looking into. And I really had a bee in my bonnet that, Matt, you must have somehow sensed, that I thought that we could together, because you guys were at that point, you guys were young.
Very young.
And just full of generative energy, which I could feel in the email, and you wanted to look into the relationship between Burle and Dvorak, and so did I. So I still said, nope, I don't have time. I remember we had several back and forths about, oh, come on, you have time. Nope, you don't have to. Trying to understand, how I could fit into your time frame, because you wanted to premiere the piece rather soon after our contact.
Well, I had no idea at that point, what it took to, commission from a composer, and the contractual obligations. I mean, this was something we were learning, and at that time I thought, okay, 6 months might be enough time to ask the composer to do this. But again, that was kind of a crazy. I mean, that was just a little bit of naivete on our part. But I remember I also put in my pitch to you that we had just won this award from the Houston Press called the Masterminds Award. It came with $2,000. It was no strings attached. We could use it for anything. And so that was another reason I said we don't want any. What we want to do with this money is put it towards this commission from you. And that was also a way to kind of nudge our board in approving and adopting this really large scale project that we want to do, that we had no money for, really, except for this $2,000.
Yeah. And I just wanted to be part of your energy, to be really honest. I thought, well, I can do this. I know how to do it. I have to go to a very deep place in my creative pool and plead to the muse to stay with me while we do this. And so what happens to me is when the muse says, okay, let's go, then oddly enough, the piece just kind of arrives full blown in my head. And I have to work it out on paper and, make it technically challenging and also good for you to play. At that point, the piece could have been for a quartet of kazoos. When it arrives full blown, all that means is that there's a piece, and then I have to, and then I work on what is the piece. It was really fascinating because it really came together fast and deep, which is just the kind of pressure that I've found in my life makes me go to the places I might not go if I have more time creatively. I see you guys nodding. Isn't it true? Just have to get the right amount of pressure for the risks to just say, yeah, let's go. Let's take these risks and make the piece. And we did. And isn't it been fun since then?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the first commission of the 20 by 2020 project takes us back to the very origins of American music, because that was something that Dvorak he started this whole idea of American music that came out of American roots. And the American roots here, of course, are the Negro spirituals. Libby, what you base the piece, which is called Sorrow Song and Jubilee, you take your inspiration from the great spiritual Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Why did you particularly choose that?
A number of reasons. one of them is that it is used in Dvorak's Ninth Symphony. You hear it in the flute solo. You hear it used, but it's not the one that's focused on. Going Home is the melody that we recognize right away and say that's Dvorak. But Swing Low is part of that. So there was that. There was another reason, and that's that it's instantly recognizable in our in the Western European culture we live in. And I want, and when you're a composer, and there is the question of who is the audience and how can they hear what you have to say. And so it helps to be able to hook something, in the soul of the listener. There was that, but the third reason is that I don't know if you remember the name Will Parker, a very fine singer who was a very dear friend of mine. He is the person who founded the AIDS Quilt Songbook. And I wrote a piece for him to sing at the first AIDS Quilt Songbook concert. But the last concert he gave was in Minneapolis at the Walker Art Center when he could no longer even stand. He had AIDS. And he sat in a chair alone on stage and sang Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And it's in my heart. And I think I needed also to say hello to Will a little bit through this piece. So it's all those reasons. Isn't it amazing how a tune carried through the generations, finally through Henry Burleigh's voice, into a Western musical institution, just carries the spirit of 1,000 years on it, and here we all are yet again, applying our hearts and souls to it.
It would be really great to hear Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and I think we may be able to do that, Matt.
Yes, we have enlisted a friend of ours and a collaborator named Wayne Ashley, who's a member of Houston Chamber Choir and just a wonderful human being, to sing that as a performance, as the example of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot.
Well, let's take a listen. Here's Wayne Ashley with Swing Low, Sweet Chariot.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Oh, swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, oh, sweet chariot coming for to carry me home.
Thank you to Wayne Ashley, a member of the Grammy-winning Houston Chamber Choir, for that beautiful rendition of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Libby, of all the well-known Negro spirituals, musically, what is it about this piece that that you saw as a potential for your piece?
I think it is the way the pitches work in the melody. The melody is a pentatonic, meaning 5-note melody, the black keys of the piano, the pentatonic scale. And the way that those pitches are formed in the melody and repeated swing. And I don't mean jazz swing. They just work. Swing low, sweet chariot. It goes zoom, coming for to carry me home. High again. It's as if the gesture, the music, the words, the feeling, it's all one. So now we're actually talking technically, about music, which is where I spend most of my time. I'm working also with strings, and strings have their own very special physics with the way that the instruments sound. It's all bound up with the way the instruments have been developed, and the air around them in the room where they're playing. And I told you the piece arrived full blown. I could actually hear the opening of the piece, which is it's quite misty, where there's little swing lows going on, just held in the air. That has to do with the physics of the instrument and the melody, and how the notes of the melody, and how I can work with them almost to make the tune come alive in the air without asking any of the performers to play the full tune. Yeah.
So let's ask some of the performers then, what was your first reaction to Libby's piece, Annabelle?
Well, let me think back. It's been a while. I think we were just very excited to be able to play a piece by such a renowned composer, and we just didn't know what to expect, But I think because the tune, it's behind me right now, but you can see at the very opening, we hear the fragments of Swing Low already. And so I think that creates this atmosphere for the sorrow song very, very clearly. And I think that we recognize that right away, but it wasn't until we get into the Jubilee part that we were like, oh, this transforms into something completely different, and the mood just changes, and it's a transformative piece, if you will.
What was it like from the violist standpoint, Whitney?
Well, first off, I had to do a little bit of fangirling because I had heard about Libby Larsen from my former professor, James Dunham, who premiered her viola sonata, and I was familiar with that work. And also just Libby had been a word in many of my music history courses at Vanderbilt. Some of my professors there were big fans of hers. So after I got over that initial thing, I was so excited because not only were we getting to premiere this piece by Libby Larsen, we had actually done it, and she had said yes and had written us a piece. And I enjoyed reading through the score, all of the instructions she gives us. She asks the viola part to climb to heaven at one point. And we get to be bawdy and like an old country church organ. All of these things were just like creating sort of aural images in my ear and brain. And it was so exciting with my colleagues to try to explore what we could do to make those sounds and those instructions come to life.
Well, Matthew Dudzik, when you opened that score for the first time and played through it, what was your initial reaction? Do you remember?
Well, I think, you know, those familiar threads that were present at the very beginning gave you something to hold on to as you were exploring this new world of sounds and this new piece for the first time. So that, I think, is really lovely because it gives the listener an immediate in to the music. And then Libby brings her, you know, her voice to it and gives us this really special atmosphere, which is unique. So it's familiar and it's new at the same time. And I think that was really, really lovely. And then, like my colleagues have been describing, the Jubilee and the sort of the joyfulness of the second half and all of the really fun character instructions that she gives to the ensemble. Like I have a gospel glissando that I get to play. So all of that stuff, you know, on a first impression was really just engaging and fun. And we were, you know, so thankful that we had the opportunity to work with Libby and to share this piece with the world with her.
Libby, talk about we have two parts here. We have Sorrow Song and we have Jubilee. What is it particularly that carries the Sorrow Song that enables it to become a Jubilee?
There's something mystical about it. This is why I'm hesitating. I would say, have you witnessed a funeral in New Orleans?
A jazz funeral.
A jazz funeral, you know, which is really quite jubilant and also sorrowful at the same time. And I had that in mind, but really I had, and this might be too deep for everybody, and just say too deep, don't go there. But you know, is that at the moment that sorrow and at the loss of something deeply meaningful changes through the miracle of acceptance into joy. That's really what I was aiming for in this particular piece. Is, you know, is when does sorrow become joy? Which every sorrow has the opposite available. And that, I think, is something that music can help us understand, non-texted music, in ways that maybe other things can't, maybe movement, maybe dance can. But so in this piece, I wanted to spin the fragments long enough so that we were so steeped in the atmosphere of the piece that by giving it an emotional transition in the into Jubilee, that for the listener you would actually feel yourself moving into not just joy but jubilation. And the way that you guys, you know, you fabulous musicians accomplish that transition is really stunning. It's really stunning. I don't know how you do it, and I'm so grateful you do.
Thank you, Libby.
You know, I think it's about time that we heard this very first of the 20 by 2020 commissions. This performance is that world premiere performance. I think it took place in Duncan Recital Hall at the Shepherd School of Music at Rice University. Here. Oh, that's the background.
This is it. There we are.
And this was in September of 2014. Any comments before we hear this?
Well, we didn't have too much time with this piece, as we mentioned earlier. I mean, we gave Libby about 6 months and said, "Hey, we need the piece by then," and she was so gracious in doing this for us. I can't overstate that, how grateful we are that Libby launched this wonderful project of ours. Yeah, let's let her music speak for itself.
Well, here is Libby Larsen's Sorrow Song and Jubilee, the Apollo Chamber Players performing 2014, the first of their 20 by 2020 commissions. 2014. That was Sorrow Song and Jubilee, the first of the Apollo Chamber Players 20 by 2020 commissions, composed by Libby Larsen. And we are joined here by Libby Larsen and the 4 members of the Apollo Chamber Players. I was thinking, as I was listening to that, Libby, that the point of contact between Sorrow Song and Jubilee is that idea of home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Mm-hmm. And because the Jubilee is that sense of jubilation when one achieves the heavenly home, isn't it?
Yes, knowing that you're home, really home, is an extraordinary feeling, and one that I think we're all revisiting at this particular time during the COVID, sheltering in place. Sheltering in place and being at home may be 2 different things, and thinking about what is home and how do we know we're there. All I know is when I know that I'm home, I am full of joy. Jubilation.
Is home a physical space, or is it your family, or what is it? Is it? I think that's a very interesting concept to explore.
Yeah.
As I like to say, home is where the books are. So let me ask the musicians, thinking back to September of 2014, and you finished that world premiere performance of Sorrow Song and Jubilee. What did you feel? How did you feel? What are your memories of the completion of that for the very first time, Whitney?
The first time, it was just like, oh my gosh, we did it. A feeling of, I guess, jubilation, jubilee, that we were excited, but also just thinking ahead, like now we have 19 more commissions to go. And just so many people that we loved and cared about were there for that premiere. And it was just so, I felt honored that we had friends and family and professors there to witness the first of 20 commissions. So it was really exciting.
Annabelle, when Matthew Dudzik proposed 20 new commissions by 2020, there was a great sense of, it's a leap of faith for you as an ensemble, because you are counting on the fact that the Apollo Chamber Players will still be around and still performing music together.
That's right, St.John. I would say that I think Matthew Dudzik almost said that jokingly, thinking that it was never going to happen. And then Matt Dietrich went and said, I think this has to happen. And so convincing our board was another challenge. But I believe the premiere, and going again with this idea of home, this was a real mission, a real challenge and a purpose. So we had a purpose to complete this project, right? So now we knew what we needed to do. And because this first commission was so inspired and so great, it was so well received, it really gave us the confidence needed to keep going. And it gave our board of directors also, the confidence to say, okay, let's jump into this. And also, I guess a lot of other people that ended up being sponsors and just, joining with us in this creation of this huge project that we really had no idea what we were getting into. That's always I would say. But
and in some sense, that's the leap of faith, right? You do something bold. You say, okay, let's, had we known the effort it would take to get through this, I mean, it's good that you don't know that when you start something like this.
But also, Matthew, here Apollo was beginning to create its own identity, because the 20 by 2020 project has really come to define you as an ensemble, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think going back to that first commission before this project, that Matt described when we were when we commissioned Kareem Alzan for a new piece to premiere at Carnegie Hall. The whole idea was, something new. There's a lot of ensembles that play the standard repertoire very well, and we wanted to do something that was uniquely us as well.
Matt, I know that you have recently, very recently, re-recorded Sorrow Song and Jubilee. 6 years later, what's that been like?
Well, since it was the first piece of the project, we wanted to do a new recording of it to show kind of the interpretive evolution of the piece over the past 6 years. We have performed this. We performed it in Cuba. We performed it all around the United States. For kids and libraries and all over the place. And so that's one of the special things about commissioning a new piece of music. What you want it to live on in the performance of other groups. So what I thought would be very cool to do is record a new performance of it for our festival 20 by 2020, our virtual festival, and kind of compare the two interpretations and how we all have grown during the course of this project.
When coming back to this piece 6 years later, what is different about it, if anything?
Well, how about somebody speak to the tyranny of the bar lines?
Well, I guess I can talk about the tyranny of the bar lines and feel like we're escaping that more and more the more that we perform this. But I think that we're able to take more risks now in timing and with the character instructions that Libby has given us. And there's just, because we're so comfortable with this work, I feel like, it's just one step away from being memorized, honestly, for most of us. And so we can get our eyes up and out of the music and react and be musicians with each other for this piece. So it is, I think there's a little bit more freedom in how we're performing it.
Libby, as the composer, do you get nervous when an ensemble or like the Apollo Chamber Players says that their approach has matured, that their performance of the piece now is different? Or I guess what I'm saying is, does your perception of the piece always remain the same, or does your perception mature in the same way that the performer's perceptions mature?
I love to collaborate in this way. I put on the paper what I can in the best way that I can at the time, and then trust the performer to live with it. Live with the page until the page is no longer useful. And that's the way I look at it. It's an interesting exercise in trust that we composers go through because, believe it or not, notation is very meager. It's so meager and it's so elegant at the same time. I trust I'll say 1,000 years again. I think this is the second time I've said it in this, but I trust the 1,000 years of evolution of our musical notation system to inform a really fine performer's moment.
I think it's time to listen to the 2020 version of Sorrow Song and Jubilee.
The piece that launched 20 by 2020.
the Apollo Chamber Players with their most recent performance of Libby Larsen's Sorrow Song and Jubilee, the very first of the Apollo Chamber Players 20 by 2020 commissioning project. Thank you all very much for joining us and for talking about this piece, the piece that got it all rolling. Thank you very much, Libby, for being so generous with your time and giving us insights that only you could bring to the piece. And thank you also to the 4 members of the Apollo Chamber Players, Matt, Annabelle, Whitney, and Matthew. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.